And I think we're live. Let's see here. Yep. Now to send out the link. Hello. Okay. Let's ping everyone. All right. And then I just decided to close out the web browser that I was using to look at chat. Well, that's gonna be a problem. So let's go back to there. Let's try that again. All right. Hello. Guess I'll probably wait a little tiny bit for people to start showing up. Let's see. See if I go to posting this in the Origins Discord. All right. Cool. Now we have 2 people watching. That should be, I mean, I think I can probably start for those. I mean, I don't know how many people I would actually get to view this and be helpful for the video if it actually started at some point in time. So let's get started. For those of you who don't know, the Origin Creator is a tool for visually creating origins, or at least in a more visual manner. It's not necessarily fully visual, but it's a way of creating data packs in a way that makes it a little bit simpler than having to deal with just basic JSON code, which is the stuff at the top of every single page in the Origin Creator. You can find this stuff, and this code can be a little hard for people to understand. So sometimes it helps to have just little buttons and dialog boxes that you can type in instead. And the first thing that I do want to cover with the Origin Creator is, I did make a video on this, but the first thing I want to cover is just creating a very, very basic origin. So the simplest way when the Origin Creator is, when you first launch it for the first time, what you'll probably get is something like this. The URL should be in the video, or it should be in the live stream description, but it's also up at the top. You'll get something that looks something like this with just a single file, and it's kind of hard to understand what's going on. In this specific page, how to get origins working on Aternos. That's a vaguely related question. When it comes to getting origins working on Aternos, I've worked a little bit with their server infrastructure before. It's kind of difficult to upload just generic files. Something you might be able to do is submit the world folder with the origins data pack inside of that data packs folder, and then submit the whole world as one. But you'll have to do that every single time you post a change to the data pack. It might work though. I haven't really done much testing on that. You can get certain mods on Aternos, but there's not a lot. But anyway, when it comes to Origin Creator, if you actually went to the page, the first thing you'll see is just an empty meta square over on the left. The meta file is actually the main thing that you use to configure the data pack as a whole. I don't think a lot of people actually know that this meta file exists, even though there is a help page which you can always get to by clicking this button. This also serves as the home page for the Origin Creator. And there's all these different accordions at the bottom and helpful information up at the top for people to read. For example, please read all the dropdowns before using the tool. Or all cyan blue text, including this blue text here, can be clicked. So, for example, if I were to click on this, I'm going to open up in a new tab, but I think that, yeah, this one doesn't open in a new tab. Most blue text on the Origin Creator opens up in a new tab. I don't think the things in this homepage do. That's probably a bug that I can actually fix. But any cyan or blue text can actually be clicked on. This is the this is the home page for the Origin Creator. It's very helpful to read. It does provide a lot of information about how to use the tool. For anyone who hasn't actually seen this page before, this little help button up at the top, you can click on to view the Origin Creator, or I think a lot of the time you can just refresh the page and it'll send you to this page. So if I click on here and refresh, it'll also send you to this page. It's the home page, but it's got tons of information. So I guess maybe I'll just cover this to start, because even just with the basic files, this has way more information than anything that I can even cover. If you don't know this, it's very difficult to actually get into the Origin Creator at all. So of course, read all the drop-downs fully, and all cyan blue text can be clicked. And I also put a little disclaimer here. The Origin Creator can make it easy for people who are developing Origins for the first time. Can make it a little easier for them rather than making a data pack from scratch. But you do want to read up on the official wiki right here, which you'll find links throughout the tool, throughout different files, all these blue links that you can click, which link directly back to the wiki and show information about any of those files in specific. So of course, this is the Origins documentation. If you've never seen it before, you can see some very basic data packs guides, like making an origin in the first place. This is all text. I also have something vaguely related to this in the Origins flow help, which I'll cover a little bit later. But in general, always look around for blue links if you don't exactly know what a field does, because it will link you back to the wiki. And you can click on those blue links throughout the tool, just regular click, and it'll open it up in a new tab. So when you're dealing with custom data packs, you can also actually that's the file over there. You can also, if you ever need or find like some kind of bug or change, you can always report it on my Discord. But just for my sake, you can also go to this GitHub repo here, which actually stores all of the information for the entire Origin Creator. All of the file data for every single editor can be found on this GitHub repo. And this is anything that uses this will remain free, something that I really wanted to look at. So, but if you ever want to look at this, for every single file editor, there are a lot of different files. This is the power section, for example. And you can find, this one's by entity conditions, and there's a whole lot of code here, but I think there's like 3,000 lines or something. No, there's 5,000 lines, never mind. So that's, if you ever find a small bug, you can probably do a Control F and find text in there and pull request your changes. But in general, there's more than just that though on this page. And these little buttons at the bottom, these are drop downs. These are accordions. You can click on these to see any more of the information in the tool. For example, the social tab, you can find my Discord here on this page. You can click the little join button, or you can find the official Origins Discord down below. There's also a video tutorial. There apparently a lot of people have seen this, but I wonder if after making this a dropdown, less people have started to see this. This video tutorial shows how to make a very, very basic origin. There is an intentional mistake in there, intentional in quotation marks, an intentional mistake inside the video. And that's just to kind of keep you on your toes a little bit. A lot of the time you'll find that when you're working with origins, it'll be a little bit difficult to get everything working on the first try, and you might find yourself making very common errors for the first couple origins that you make. And so I use that as a way to kind of emphasize that certain things are important. So I would highly recommend checking out this video tutorial. This is on YouTube. I mean, you're already on YouTube if you're watching the stream. But there is a video tutorial that you can look at, and this I'll cover a couple more of different origin ideas depending upon what people want to see. But then also the most important drop down, which seriously, this is a very important drop down. It says important information. A lot of people should really read this. Of course, the Origin Creator autosaves. It autosaves all the data that goes into it. And data is stored in a local spot on your computer. It's not stored necessarily in your browsing history. It's kind of related to that, but it's not stored online. So if you switch from computer to computer, it'll be different data because it's stored locally. It's a little bit difficult to access that data directly. I do have a script in my Discord for when I messed up with a domain name, where you can actually grab the data out of your browser cache. It's a little hard to put it back in, but you can actually grab that out of your browser cache. But you can also, and I really feel like you should export constant backups of this specific format, JSON OC or JSON Origin Creator. These don't work in regular Minecraft as data packs, but it's the exact way that the Origin Creator stores its data, and it will usually be a little bit faster to export. So if you export as that, you'll have consistent backups that will always import back in the exact same way. Data packs, you can also export your work constantly as data packs, but they can be less reliable to import directly back into the Origin Creator. But of course, they work in Minecraft, so it doesn't really matter necessarily which one you use. Just always back up what you're doing. And this is a general good principle. Always keep backups of things that you find important. If you don't keep backups of things that you find that are important, when you lose them, it'll be very, very hard to get them back. You might just have to start from scratch. And then, because people don't know for some reason still, I say again, blue text is clickable. The other important thing in this meta file up here, there's a couple of fields that initially what I was going to go into. There's a couple of important fields that you should note, and I'll click on that now. The first one is pack format down here, and oh, there we go. There's a blue link. You can click on this, and you can see all the numbers for different versions of Minecraft. Although I feel like these things here are a little less helpful, but in general, the Origin Creator, I believe it goes back to pack format 6. Oh, well, it goes back to pack format 6, but it allows you to go to insert pack format numbers that are earlier than that. A pack format number of 6, if you go to this page after clicking this blue link, you can see that it refers to data packs from the time period 1.6.2 to 1.6.5. So effectively 1.6, except for 1.6.1. This is important. Different features will be available depending upon what you set this number to. If you want to make something for the most recent version of Minecraft, well, I think that I didn't actually do 13 yet. Oh, this is actually data pack. Data pack is different. 1.9.4 4 is 12 technically. They kind of skipped over 11 or was only in the screenshots. The Origins mod doesn't necessarily have a version for 1.19.4. Hey, Kayla. So when it comes to 1.19, the most recent version of Origins, if you want to make sure that you support all versions of 1.19, you'll want to use version 10, which is the most recent version of the Origin creator that it supports. And so I'll keep this back at 10. There's also some other features that are available in pack format 10 in base vanilla Minecraft as well. The other important field here is the ID field up at the top. The ID field is kind of the base ID, the base namespace that everything uses in your data pack. So if I just make a file here, some kind, I'll just make an origins file. Make an origin of some kind. And then I go ahead and export this file as a data pack. So this will show up somewhere in my data pack file here. And actually, I don't think I can open this in my browser in the typical sense, but no, I guess that probably won't necessarily work. I'll have to take a screenshot of this. So take a screenshot of that, and then the location, and then I'll put it in my browser. There we go. Okay, so this is the format of the data pack that was exported, and you'll notice here this namespace that is used is called my pack. This namespace here is the same namespace that is specified here. This is the default namespace for anything that you choose to use. If you want to specify a different namespace than this, you can always change this. You can say, I don't know, Mario pack or something like that. If you're making Mario related origins, you can do that, or just X Mario origins or something related to that. Then you can put that in there. This ID will be used as the default regardless of what happens. And then finally, the most important thing in the important information section down at the bottom is what that ID is used for. That namespace specifies, of course, the default namespace for the files that you choose to use. And here below is a tree of the given folder structure that actually specifies which, well, based upon all of these folders and files, what IDs they have, so you can use them in game, or so you can use them in a certain file that you've specified. Now, if you want in certain files, you can also use 0 to just kind of refer to this ID, regardless of what it is. You can just use 0. You can use 0, but in general, let's say the meta field has ID set to fruit, and I had a block tag under here called block fruits. This block tag would have the ID fruit : block fruits. Or for another example, this item tag down here, which is inside the colored folder, colored red, it will have the item tag, this item tag will have the namespace fruit colored /red. I feel like this is kind of something that a lot of people misunderstand about the Origin creator and how it works. And more often than not, you're not going to really have to use more than one namespace, but there are some cases where you might have to. And so, for example, under this recipes section of the specific file tree, there is a namespace down here, a namespaced specified file, which is inside folder A. This is a recipe with a different namespace than the rest of the files here. This namespace in this case is veggie. And you can specify that by doing veggie : and then whatever the name is. The folder is inserted inside of after the namespace, and then the name of the file is then used afterwards at the end. So if you can understand that, that's the most important things that you need to understand when you're using the origin creator, just in general. And if you kind of understand that, it'll be a lot easier to utilize and create origins with the origin creator. There are more drop downs for describing basic usage and other forms of useful tidbits of information regarding the origin creator, but I'll kind of cover those throughout making just any kind of origin in general. So, but in general, if you start with just a basic, if you actually go to the webpage, your very first time, you'll probably be greeted with just this page, almost exactly the way that it's seen. And you probably won't even know where to start. The first thing that you want to do is just click this little reset button in the bottom left. This will allow you to reset your entire pack back to some kind of state. If you want to make a vanilla data pack, you can click on this folder. You can also create an origins data pack as well through this, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an origins data pack. Then I can also set a pack version. This does not show the numbers that each individual version uses, but if I pick this, it'll be 10. If I pick this, it'll be 9. If I pick this, it'll be 8, and so on and so forth. So in general, you can utilize this to just kind of pick the version that you want to try to support in general. So I'm going to pick 1.19.1, and then we'll go for a origins data pack, and then I'll click reset. So in here, now you can see the tree has populated with a bunch of folders and some files. There's more folders in here, but the most important file here is the origins namespace layer, the origin layer. You actually have to put your origin, if you ever create one, you have to put it inside this layer. You have to put the name of it, or at least the namespace of it, inside this layer. So let's say I make a new origin. In this case, we'll call it, I don't know, we could stick with the same Mario theme. We could say it's a Mario origin. And so in this case, we can give it some powers, which I'll add a little bit. And we can give it a name, obviously, Mario. Description, let's you be like. And in general, when you go to pick an origin, this is what you'll see. You'll see the name and the description. And then for each of the powers, you'll also see their name and description on that list as well. But in order to make it choosable in that list of origins, you're going to have to go into the origins origin namespace and add the origins names, the origins ID inside this box. Now, because I didn't provide a namespace, it'll go ahead and automatically fill it in using this 0:. And remember before, that's just the default namespace, what I specified here. So Mario pack, whatever. This ID right here, this namespace, is what this file actually uses. So in general, this would be the exact same thing as specifying if I took this, copy and paste an entire there. So if I put this ID back in here, copy that. If I put this into here instead, it's the exact same thing. This is the exact same thing as putting a 0 here. And in general, you don't actually have to put the 0 there. It'll automatically put it there for you. But it is nice to have in case you do something like this and you don't really feel like putting the namespace in. Maybe you'll change it later. Then you can change it all at once throughout the entire pack. So we'll say we'll do that. And then we can also give this file a namespace. Remember, not specifying a namespace is the exact same thing as if I took this and renamed it. It's the exact same thing because I'm already providing an ID. I can also rename it back. Oop, I duplicated it there. So now we can talk about some powers related to these origins. And For this, if anyone just wants to chime in with something that they're interested in making this origin do, or maybe we can make a different origin, you can say something in chat. Or if not, if nobody has many ideas or anything that they want to know in specific, then I can look up some specific Mario related powers that I think will be helpful. So, well, all right. Well, if nobody's got many ideas for this, then I'll just continue along with explaining some powers. The most common one, I think, that everybody really, really wants to know is how to make a power that changes your size. And in general, this is actually a pretty complicated feat. It requires you to use a completely different mod in addition to the Origins mod. You have to use 2 different mods for this to work. And so, because that's such a complicated thing, I actually have a page on it on my flow help, which I can go ahead and cover now. The Origins flow help, you can find it here, and usually I'll link to it in my official Discord when somebody asks a question. If I click on it here, and then I say I need help with making a data pack, making a specific power, there's all these different examples of things that you can learn how to make, but the most common one is that I'm going to go over here is change the player's size or reach, but that's Pakui. And there's an example at the bottom here. Even if you don't care about reading half of this, there's an example down here that just shows how to set your size to 65% of what it normally is. And you can just kind of copy paste this. And in general, whenever you see JSON code like this and you want to put it into the origin creator, there's a very easy way of doing that. If I copy this in place and I go back to the origin creator, let's say I'll create a new power of some kind. We'll say large, because we're going to change it. We'll change this large thing here. We can click this button up at the top, and when we click on that, it opens up this JSON editor. And if we just select the whole thing and then paste, finally, we click this little button up here, which uploads or saves the changes in this text box. All of those changes get saved into the origin creator for us. So therefore, if anyone asks you for the JSON code of your power and you don't know where to find it, just click on this button up at the top left of wherever you're looking, and you have it right here. You'll notice that certain aspects of this are very similar to the actual page. For example, name is the same, description is the same. So if you look, name, description, type up here, action or callback. If you scroll down, you can see action or callback down here as well. There's also some extra fields that aren't filled in on this part of the page, or that aren't, you don't even see them in the JSON code, but they are here in case you ever need to use them. So how do we change this power? Because I said by default, this makes you 65% your normal size. And the way that it does that is by using a very special power type called action on callback that gives you, or doesn't give you, it actually executes a command when you first get the power. Once you first get this power, whether you choose it from an origins, if you choose that origin and the origin has the power, or if you're given it through other means, like say a command of some kind. As soon as that happens, this entity action here will run, and all of these commands inside of it will also run. And these commands in Pakui, that's the extra mod that you need in order to be able to use this. If you don't know how to get that mod, it's actually on this page, and you can see you can get the Pakui mod here, and you can click on this link. It's a blue link. You can click on blue links. So these 3 commands set the height, width, and then this final command actually makes it so it persists on death. After you die, it will save your height and width for whatever power this is. And In this case, it sets it to 0.65, which seems familiar. 65% normal size. 0.65. So, if I say change this to 1.2, and change this to 1.2, what do you think that would do? Well, it would increase the height by 20%. So we would be 120% the normal size. Or say I set this to 1.5. Then you would be 150% size. And there's actually more options than that Pakui provides that aren't just height and width. There is also, to their mod page, there's a lot of different options at the bottom. You can change the eye height of the entity, which generally you would, but that's also affected by height. Or you can change the width of only the model, which is affected by width. And you'll notice that a lot of these things are affected by each other. If you change the base scale, every other one of these would be changed as well. Well, in most cases, projectile. These actually won't get changed, but those generally have other ways of changing them. But something that is useful is mining speed. You can change your block breaking speed this way. So I can take this, I can put it back here. I could say I want to have another power here, and then we'll just kind of put that up here. Execute command, and let's say I want to make it so I mine blocks speed. I want to mine blocks 150% or an extra 50% the speed that I normally mine blocks. Then I can do 1.5. But then you do that. Now, in general, you can do this with any one of these. Should close these out. In general, you can do those with any one of these fields. But the ones that you'll mainly want will be width and height, which change the size. Or you might want to change mining speed, attack speed. You can also change health this way, but there's actually a better way of changing health. You don't really want to use Pakui. It's a little more complicated than it needs to be. Or attack. You can use defense as well. There's also a better way of doing that. But in general, if you want to change your height and width, in general your size, then you can use this power type. And there's also a plethora of power types that are available on the official Origins Discord. There is, I believe they call the channel the Power Library channel, and in that channel you can usually find any kind of power that you would want that you can kind of change. You'll find the JSON code of it, put it in here, and change it how you want. And though, if you want to search in a specific channel on Discord, you can do so like, let's see if I can put it in here. We'll say in oh, it's actually scrolling my page for me. Power in library search. Oop, put a G there instead of an H. Oops. But in general, you can type a Discord search like that, and it will allow you to look only in a specific channel. You could do that for any channel. You can use that in the Datapacks channel. You can use that in the, well, any channel in there. You can use it in the Origins, ideas, suggestions. You can use it anywhere that you want to. And if you just replace the thing in brackets, then you can look up only in a very, very specific channel, and you'll find anything that you could want, any kind of power that you want. And you usually won't have to ask for it if somebody else has asked for it before. If somebody else needed it, they might have it there. And so this is, let's just keep this power as is. Ooh, probably shouldn't have deleted that. This is why I said keep backups. The origin creator actually doesn't have an undo at the moment. It is something that I will probably work on in the future. But let's say I come in here, execute action, and then I don't know exactly what it said. Was it this? Copy paste that, put that back here. Okay. Scale persists at true. And now from here, I'm going to add this power to the origin that I created. This power does not get added to any origin unless you specify. So in the same way that we put the origin in the origin layer, we have to put the power in the origin. So in this case, we have a powers box. We'll just put the name of the power here. You'll notice that 0:, the same way that it shows up in the list of origins in the origin layer. There's a 0:, here. There's a 0:, here, in the exact same way. And like I said before, that's just this ID in this file up here. So this is the exact same thing. It's just doing this. It's the same thing. But it's easier just to not specify it. Okay. So this is a very, very basic data pack. On its own, you can actually use this. The only thing that it'll do is it'll add an origin called Mario, who's very big. That's it. That's all it'll add. And that's kind of boring for an origin, but it does serve as a nice base that we can work off of. What's something else that Mario can do? Well, he can break blocks. He can break blocks above him. So we can make something a little bit more complicated. What if we want to break a block that Mario jumps into? This origin, if you jump into a block from below, it should break that block. Well, the first thing we'll do, we'll add a power for it. We'll come down here. We'll say break block. Say break from below. That's what we'll call it. Break from below. Go ahead and click on this. We'll give it a name. Blocks below, and allows you to break, say, can break blocks above you by jumping into them. Maybe we don't want them to be able to break every block. For example, bedrock, maybe obsidian. So you can break blocks below the strength of obsidian above you by jumping into them. And we started off with a very simple goal. But in general, this concept here, below the strength of obsidian, is actually a little more difficult than you would think. I actually don't know how to do this off the top of my head. But I know where to find how I can do this. And I have some other ideas about how I can get this as well. So if we come down below, the very first thing that we want to do is, if we want to be able to test if there's a block above him, we can't break a block if there's no block above him. And he also has to be jumping. For this power to work, two things have to be true. It's got to be jumping, three, but he's got to be jumping, and he has to have a block above him, or whoever has this origin, whatever. There has to be a block above them. And that block has to be less than the strength of obsidian. So for that, we have a condition. We want this power to only activate under a specific condition. Well, what is that condition? Well, that condition occurs when we are in the air. So let's see. Is there something where we can check if we are in the air? Does not seem like there is one directly, but if we don't know, we can always click this little type button and we can find the full list of types here. Let's say I say air. Air? What's this? Well, this isn't what we want. This checks how much air or breath an entity has, how much they can breathe. Okay, what else can we use? Conditions can be confusing, but that's why you have to be able to look through this list to find exactly what you want, because it might not be under what you initially expect it to be under. So we'll just keep looking. We'll say brightness, climbing, collided horizontally. And you can kind of look at these and you kind of see, it's probably not what I want. I'm not colliding horizontally with a block. I'm colliding vertically with a block. Okay. So let's say fall distance. Something interesting about fall distance is it always is positive if you are falling. If you're jumping up into the air and then you start falling, then it'll be positive. So let's look at fall distance. This checks how many blocks the entity has been falling. And this is actually a float. This is a float value, which means it can be in half blocks. It can be in quarter blocks. It can be in a tenth of a block, which can be helpful. This could be something that we might be able to use, but maybe there's a better solution. Maybe we can keep looking to see if there's something else that might be better for our use case. So let's continue. We'll keep going on. Fall flying, probably not. Fluid height, fluid level, game mode, glowing, health, in block, in rain, no. Yeah, but in general, if we don't understand certain conditions, you probably won't have to use them. But if you need it for a very specific use case, then you can probably click on the page and ask about it. I do have in the Origins Flow Help here, you can go through this page. I don't actually have a link for this. You can find it on my webpage by clicking this help button, but I'll also send a link in chat. If you go there and you click on the making a data pack and then click make use a specific power, you can click on here. You can say, if you want to learn more about conditions, click here. You can click there. You can check based upon all these things. You can check, okay, well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to check if I'm on a block or if I'm on the ground. Okay, well, let's see. If I'm in a biome, no. If block, well, that's close. That's if I'm on a block. So let's click on it. This shows all of the block related conditions, and there's a lot less here. There's a lot less here than, say, this entire page that we see here. So going through this whole list might not be helpful, but it might help to go through a much smaller list. The only problem is this does not have every single condition in the game or in Origins. Not every condition is available here. Most of them are that you'll need on a daily basis, but not all of them are. So I just wanted to show the basic principle of just kind of going down the list until you find what you need. And in general, I was actually almost there before you had said something. This one right here. We started out with a problem that we wanted to test if we were on the ground. But this condition, on block, it doesn't have the word ground in it. It doesn't have the word air in it. It does have the word on in it. So we could have looked up on, but that really wouldn't have helped. There's too many things on the page for us to be able to find that. So sometimes you have to look through each one to find exactly what you want. In this case, it's on block. And the on block condition allows us to check if a block underneath our feet fulfills a specified block condition. Block conditions, you can just think of them as they kind of test the block. That's all. They check what it is. So, for example, they check if it's a grass block. They check if it's air. They check if it's in a specific biome, what the temperature of the biome, or light. I think light is another one. Maybe it's better that I go there instead of describing it. You can check the NBT of the block. You can check fluid there. You can check a lot of things. But sometimes a condition will not initially look like something that solves your problem. So sometimes you have to look deeply into these to really get a clue about what they do. This is a great example of this. Air in Minecraft is a block. It is technically a block. So what we can do to check if we're in the air is we can say, are we on the block Minecraft air? We can almost use this exact same condition here. We can change this to air. But now that I think about it, what if we jump into a block and we're not above air? What if we are standing just barely on the ground? What if the block underneath of us is not air and we're in a too wide tunnel? What if we're like sprint jumping in a tunnel, in a mine tunnel? We're mining for diamonds and we're sprint jumping. Well, the block underneath of us is not air. So this actually wouldn't work. And sometimes you'll find problems like that too. Sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where the condition that you look at might actually seem to solve your problem, but it actually doesn't. And so there's actually I know the correct way of doing this, but there is a couple of other solutions that you can look at. So we'll just keep looking on. We'll see on block, on fire, origin, passenger, power active. Just keep looking. Sprinting, sneaking, scoreboard. Well, it doesn't seem like any of these solve our problem. Okay. So, in general, sometimes you'll find that you can't really see what you want to use. You can't really find what you want. So you might want to use one of the more powerful conditions. Some conditions here are significantly more powerful than others. Those are command, NBT, and if I can find it, scoreboard. Obviously, command, and well, actually, there's also predicate. I don't know where that is, but predicate. You can also use one of these. If you can't find any condition that helps you at all, look into one of these. Namely, in the order, you want to look at NBT first. NBT is the first one you want to look at. After you've looked at the full list, sometimes you might be able to find it here on this page. But, oh, YouTube glitched out. Well, you see, trying to explain conditions in general. Trying to explain there are three very powerful, actually there's four. There's four very powerful conditions. They're almost like a step above regular conditions. They usually come with caveats though. And those caveats are that they're usually only effective server side, which means you can't use them with things that only work client side or work mainly client side. If you want to see an entity glowing on your screen, that's rendering on your screen. That's a client-side power type, which means it won't work with this entity with this condition. But sometimes that's a price that you have to pay, and oftentimes you won't even need it. These are the most powerful condition types: NBT, and you want to look at them in this order: NBT, command here, and well, I'll just go to predicate. Where is it? Predicate. These are the most powerful condition types, and you'll notice all of them are only effective server side. Because they're so powerful, they kind of have this caveat to them. However, in this case, I can tell you that it won't be necessary. We're going to break a block. Breaking a block is something that happens server side, and the server will tell the client, hey, the block's been broken. So that's fine. In this case, if we're not sure about NBT, NBT can check an entity's NBT. The player actually has some NBT tags, and it might be kind of confusing where we even find those. What NBT tags does the player even have? What does a creeper have? What does anyone have? What even is NBT? NBT is just data inside the player. That's all. That's all it is. It stores your position. It stores... actually, I don't think it stores your player hunger, but it stores your inventory. It stores a couple of other things that aren't quite the same thing as player data. But one of those fields in specific will be very useful to us. So let's look at, for example, let's say NBT player. Do you have any ideas on how to start making a cone-based attack? I can cover that next. I'm going to cover this power to start. We're going to make a very, very strange Mario origin, but let's look at the player NBT data so I can just show this real quick. If in general you want to know what the NBT of a specific mob is or a specific thing, you can look up player NBT, and usually you can kind of look around, you'll find them. We'll click on this. Okay, list of NBT tags. So a player can have certain abilities, absorption amount, air, data version for some reason. There's a lot of these things that we might not find useful. Death time, the number of game ticks the player has been dead. I actually didn't know this existed. But there's a lot of things that you won't know exist until you look at them. That's why I'd say if you can't find a condition here that you want, if you can't find it at all in here, then you're going to want to look at one of these three much more powerful conditions. They generally only work server side, but in this case it's not a problem. So let's just keep looking through the NBT tags. There's that fall distance thing again. The coordinate where we entered the nether. If we're allowed to use an elytra. Fire, how long we've been on fire for. Food level, and there's a lot of things here. But wait. It's exactly what we were looking for. An NBT tag that tells us if the player is on the ground. This is perfect. And we can test that using this. If the player is on the ground, they will have this NBT tag. And I think there's actually supposed to be a B at the end of this one, but I don't think it matters either way. So what we can do is we can choose our NBT tag here. We can put in the T right there. Simple enough. If they're on the ground, then we'll run our power. Wait, we want to break the block above us. If we're not on the ground. If you go back to that page, 1 means the player is on the ground, 0 means the player is not on the ground. We want to check if the player is not on the ground. I'm going to put a B at the end just because I know that this one in specific is supposed to have a B. Sometimes they have to have an S, sometimes they have to have an I. It's weird. Just if you don't know what to put here, just don't put anything. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. In this case, I'm just going to put a B here. B means Boolean or byte, I think, in this case, but this will allow us to check, is the player on the ground? And this doesn't have anything to do if the block is beneath them. This just allows us to test if the player's on the ground. Which, we had to do a lot of research for that. You had to go through a lot of conditions to be able to find what we want. And in general, creating origins is all about that. That's the process of making origins. All you do is you just kind of look at things slowly until you find what you want. If it's a little confusing, then you can ask. And to make some of this process easier, I do have this page on my Flow Help where you can find some basic conditions, how to use them. If you have a certain equipped item, a certain time of day, if you're in a specific dimension. But sometimes it'll require some thinking outside the box. And ultimately, if you can't find it, look at one of these three. I'm going to briefly cover command and predicate here. Command allows you to, I think you could turn this into a plugin for MCreator. I have thought about MCreator related development, but I feel like MCreator is it's even more visual than the Origin Creator itself is. So the Origin Creator has all of these fields here that you can interact with and work with. But MCreator is even more visual in this sense, if that makes sense. I don't exactly know how to explain that better. It's generally more, there's kind of less things you click. You can kind of click on, you don't have to look through this name of all these different things. You can kind of just click on something that says if you're on the ground, and then it'll put in if you're on the ground for you. It'll do that automatically. This doesn't really do this. This is kind of like a mimicry of all of the conditions that are here in the first place. It's a little more difficult to do something like that, and the only reason why is just because of how much the Origins mod actually has inside of it. The Origins mod has, I don't know, it's got so many conditions, it's got so many power types that sometimes you really just gotta look at it until you find something that's what you want. So here I put just NBT. I discovered through that long process of research that I got the NBT. It is a lot of work to put it, to kind of do MCreator in the first place, and I kind of want to focus on a little bit more of certain projects. There's also a term in terms flexibility. This kind of has a direct translation into JSON code. It's really not that much different, which kind of helps when some people are learning JSON for the first time, or if they want to just, instead of using the Origin Creator, they can use something like VS Code and just write the JSON themselves, which can be helpful to some people. Some people prefer doing it that way. I don't really prefer doing it that way, but some people do, and some people can use it kind of as a little bit of a stepping stone to get there. But this still doesn't, the Origin Creator in general doesn't really escape you. It doesn't provide an escape from, it doesn't really provide an escape from looking at all of the different, doing research effectively. Doing research at all the conditions, the power types that you want. So really, the only thing you need to make origins is just kind of to take your time. Just kind of look over things a little bit at a time. Just kind of, if you're not sure, just click on it and just look at it and like, okay, in a block. I don't really want to check if I'm in a block. I want to check if I'm on a block or on the ground. So it doesn't really help. The only exceptions are NBT, commands, and predicates. And getting back to commands, commands, I don't know if many people know this in Minecraft, but all commands actually they kind of have a numeric answer. If you run a command, it actually spits back a number, which is weird, but it is helpful in certain cases. One example is if you actually try to clear items off of a player's inventory. I think the command is, what is it? I think it's clear at S0, or what is it? Let's say iron 0. If you ran this command in game, I think that's what it is, then it'll actually spit back in your chat how many iron, or actually, I think it's iron ingot. Let's try that again. Iron ingot. If you run this in your game, if you run this in your game, it'll spit back a message in chat telling you how many iron ingots are in your inventory, which can be very helpful if you don't have an entity condition to do that. And I don't know of any conditions off the top of my head that do that. This will actually count all of the iron ingots in your entire inventory. And this actually returns back a number too. It puts that message in chat and returns the number back. You can put, for example, this command or another command into the command condition. It can be a little confusing sometimes. I'll just go back here and say, I'll change this to command real quick, or maybe I go to, copy this, say command condition. And the command I want to run, clear at S iron ingot 0. This 0 at the end, by the way, means don't clear any items. Don't clear any items from the inventory. And I can use this to count how many iron ingots are in the player's inventory. This is a fairly advanced command in the first place, or a fairly advanced condition in the first place. And of course, at the end, comparison compared to, I can say if there's more than 100 iron ingots in your inventory, this condition will be true. You can also use this to check how many, this example can check how many skeletons are within a 64 block radius around you. You have to run a command to do that. And this one checks if there's greater than 4. If there's greater than 4 skeletons, or if there's greater than or equal to 4 skeletons within a 64 block radius here, then this will return true. The condition will be true. It's a little complicated. Just kind of keep it in the back of your mind. It is there if you need something more complicated, more sophisticated. If none of the conditions at all, and if you really looked through these conditions and you can't find one that's helpful to you, then you might want to use the command condition. You might want to use the NBT condition, or you might want to use the predicate condition. The predicate condition is even more complicated than the command condition, and it actually involves using something called a predicate. The Origin creator has a way of making predicates, and just quickly I'll show this. A predicate is like a vanilla condition in Minecraft. You can kind of check things. It's actually used by loot tables. If you ever make a loot table, it's the exact same thing. It's a loot table's condition. If you want to use a loot table condition, then you can do that too. So if I just, I don't know, killed by player, I guess that doesn't necessarily make sense here. Let's say survives an explosion. If a block or entity survives an explosion, then we can put this condition, this predicate, into here. We'll say predicate, and then I'll just put the name of this predicate file the same way that we did the power or the origins. Actually, that's a bug. 0 colon there. That is a bug. I'll have to fix that. Live bug detection found. In general, you can put the name of the predicate that you make for the predicate condition. It's very complicated. Well, it's actually not too complicated. It's more complicated than the other conditions in general. Just keep in mind it's there. These are significantly more powerful entity actions or entity commands, conditions. Entity conditions. I can't speak. Entity conditions. But the entity condition, say, for the powers, I'll go back. We'll actually make this now so that way I'm not wasting too much time. But let's say I am on the ground, which requires the NBT condition and the NBT tag. On ground 0. Okay. Now we want a power. We want to do something when we're not on the ground. Well, wait, that's not the only condition. We want to check if we're on the ground. Oh, broke it. Let's try that again. If we're on the ground, and also if there's a block above us. How do we check if there's a block above us? Well, I'll just provide this simply. You actually can do, if we are in a block, if the block that we're in, say, offset 2 blocks above. So the block we're standing in, 2 blocks above that, in that position, we'll do, if it is, I think it's hard. Is it hardness? I think I should do hardness. I'm like trying to think on my own. Maybe I'll just explain this here. Right now, I'm trying to check if the block above you is less than the hardness value for obsidian, which will, for all intents and purposes, it'll prevent us from mining obsidian. It'll prevent us from mining bedrock. It'll prevent us from mining anything that you can't mine normally. But what is the hardness value of obsidian is a very good question. If the block 2 blocks above the one we're standing in, so that's the block above us, if that block is less than the hardness value of obsidian, what is obsidian hardness? Well, there's also blast resistance. 2 different things. How long it takes to break the block. Yeah, we actually want block resist. We want blast resistance. Unless, is there a different one? Here I am again, just looking through things to kind of make sure. Could also use anything that pistons can't push. I think that's what this is. No, never mind. That's not what that is. I don't really want to hold this hold you guys too long in this case. It's already been about how long has it been? It's been about 3 hours. Has it been? No, it's 7 o'clock right now. It's been about an hour. I've been streaming for about an hour. Everyone's gonna have to watch this video on 2 times the speed. Let's say we'll just simplify this. Blast resistance. The blast resistance is it's actually providing me the value of obsidian here. This example will check if the blast resistance of a block is obsidian or greater. Well, we want to check if it's less than obsidian, so I'll just copy this. This is the value of obsidian. Let's copy this over here. Okay. So this full condition, you'll find a lot of conditions that are just condition inside a condition inside a condition. So you might have to read them a little more complicated. If we are in a block, if the block we are in, so the block we're currently standing in, if we offset that by 2 blocks above us with a y value of 2, if we did a y value of 1, it would be the block where our head is. The block above that is 2y above. a y coordinate condition. And let's say I want to check if the hardness value is less than 1200. And we're on the ground. So this condition, it's a little unwieldy, but there's a chapters function in YouTube. I think you're right. I don't know if you can do that on live streams. Maybe. I'll have to look into that. But this whole condition in total checks if we're not on the ground and if the block above us has a hardness value that is less than obsidian. Cool. Okay, so we have a condition where now we want to do something. We want to do something with this condition. Okay. Well, how can we make it do something? When this condition is true, we want to do something. The simplest way to do that in general is to use the action over time action type, which actually sounds counterintuitive. We only want to run this once. We don't want to run it constantly when the condition is true for as many times as we want. We only want to run it once. I'm going to set the interval to 1 tick here. Well, we can actually use this rising action field here. When the condition becomes true, we can perform an entity action. And this entity action here, the simplest one that we can find, if we can't find what it is, we have to click on this type field here. My tabs are getting very large. Close the tabs to the right. If we can't find what we want, we have to go through the list to see. But I do know what I want, which is to execute a block action. I want to break a block. So I'm going to execute a block action. And I'm going to execute this action at my feet, but I'm going to execute it 2 blocks above that, which requires, once again, this offset. So I'll do that offset, 2 blocks above, and then I want to break the block. So let's see, do I have the ability to, I think it's set block. No, it's not set block. Pretty sure you can break the block. Let's just check. Add block, bone meal, execute command, explode, modify blocks, sets block. I guess you can't break a block with a block action. Well, there's probably a different one. Let's see, break block. Sometimes you'll have to search it up in here. I guess there's not. So that's something that probably should be added to the game. But in this case, I do know of a very simple get around. You can either set the block to air. That's not very helpful in our case because we don't just want to break the block. We want to drop what's in the block. And for that to occur, maybe modify block. That would be modify block state. That's a fairly complicated entity action that changes, say, if you're looking at a fence, if there's a fence above you, and you want to change what directions it's connected to. If you've ever seen the debug stick in game, this does whatever a debug stick does, which is not actually helpful in our case. Actually, we can execute a command. There is a fill destroy. The fill command has a destroy version, but I think the easiest way is actually just to cause it to explode. And it also gives some neat particle effects. You hit the block above you, and it explodes. Might want to toggle this power in the future, but let's say we want to, we'll just cause it to explode. And we don't know what kind of power level or any of these fields do. And in general, if you don't know what the fields do, you can always go to this page of the wiki. So here, I'll come up here, go back. I click on this and go to explode. I can come in here and I can see, okay, well, what does power do? Determines the power of the explosion. Well, that's not very helpful. Wait, there's a note. See explosion strength for a list of power values that are used in vanilla. Okay, so we'll come up here. All of these are different explosion strengths. Well, we probably don't want the block where our head is to break with the power of a TNT block or a creeper or a fireball. We probably just want to break the block. And in this case, these don't really seem super helpful in our use case. So maybe we don't use it. And I think in general, a lot of Origins development is going to be this back and forth. You're going to be like, maybe I should use that. Maybe it's not the best choice. So I'll go look at something else. Don't be afraid to look at more actions. If something isn't working for you, don't be afraid to research and find something else. The more that you do this, the more that you'll learn. And the more that you learn, the more you'll be able to, the more you'll know. So if you make the same power later, you'll be able to use that as well. I actually know an easy way to break blocks, which if this doesn't have an easy way of breaking blocks, the easiest way is actually to execute a specific command. And if we're going to do that, we can just kind of do it here instead. So let's say I'm going to execute the command. And that would be the fill command. If you don't know what the fill command is, it allows you to fill blocks in an area. Command. And /fill. There is a specific mode for this called destroy mode. And destroy mode breaks the block as if you mined it with a pickaxe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually I think, can I use set block for this? Set block is another example of one that, oh, it does work. We could just use set block. Set block has a destroy mode in the same way. Destroy mode will actually drop its contents and whatever it block breaks in general. So if you break a stone block, it'll drop cobblestone. So I want to set the block above me. Command set block. I actually have to go to push to talk. I don't have this symbol. My push to talk key is this symbol. Hopefully you can still hear me now. But let's do set block here, 2 blocks here. Okay. So in the same way, we're going 2 blocks above wherever we are. We'll set that block to air in destroy mode. Destroy, not destroy. This will break the block above us if it is less than the value of obsidian and we are not on the ground. Cool. So if you want to break blocks, feel free to use this command. I actually didn't know Origins didn't have this general. You can use the set block command and specify coordinates from the player. There's some very nice things you can do with coordinates like this, and things that you can do with commands that you can't quite do with Origins, which is why command condition can be helpful. But now, going on to that other power that you were that you wanted to deal with afterwards, cone base breath attack. Okay. Mario's gonna have some fire breath. Okay. So the first thing that I think of when I hear cone-based fire attack, the easiest way I can imagine to do this is to actually use the where is it, fire projectile action. I can't find it. Is it not called? Oh, there it is. Fire projectile. There's a lot of actions here, and I can kind of cover some of these in general. If you don't know what a field does, you can either go to the wiki to find out what it is, or you can actually hover over one of these things on the left. And apparently when I'm holding my push to talk key down, it disappears, but You can actually hold down one of these things on the left and it'll show like a little tooltip describing what it does, which can be very helpful. So let's go back. Okay. The fire projectile can actually fire more than one projectile at once. So the easiest way we can do this is by firing many projectiles. Let's say I fire 10 projectiles. If you fired them like this, it would fire 10 projectiles in one spot and they would just go, and that's not what you want. I don't exactly know what all these fields are, so I'm going to go back to the power types and find it here. Okay. So the first thing that you want to use for firing a projectile, if you want to make it a cone basis, you'll probably want to use, divergence, which impacts how much each projectile is affected by random spread. You might have to test this field a little bit, but if you want it to be more kind of spread out, then you can kind of do 2 or even 4 if you want it to be like really spread out. And that will fire all the projectiles in a very spread out motion, which can be helpful. In this case, the projectile that you'll probably want will be what is it called? It's called is it a fireball? If you don't know where to get entity types, the easiest way to get entity types is in the entity. That's pretty flattening. Do not want data values pretty flattening. This page. Let's go to the entities. There they are. And I'll put this in chat so you can find this later if you want to as well. This page shows a lot of very useful IDs in the first place. Entities, the full list of entities can be found here. We want the projectile, a small fireball, which will fire a bunch of small fireballs. So if we put that in place, small fireball, then you can fire out 10 small fireballs in a cone-like action. I think fireball or a lingering potion. Yeah, you can also fire out a lingering potion. If you want to fire a bunch of lingering potions all at once, you can actually utilize, where is it? You use potion. So you use the potion entity here. You do potion. And then underneath, you can provide it with an NBT tag. My favorite place of getting these NBT tags is from mcstacker.net. A very helpful webpage. Probably link this as well. So we'll do mcstacker.net. And from here, if you come in here and let's say I want to summon a potion, which will summon a splash potion. There is no splash potion, so it's just potion. You can specify a lot of things about it. The potion effect, I believe, where is it? Potion, here. So let's say strength. You want to throw a bunch of strength potions as a bunch of projectiles. Then you use this tag right here. So summon potion, we'll copy this tag and I'll put it into this place. So that's probably not what you want. You'll probably want a fireball, or if you want to use a little bit more powerful fireball, you can use the dragon fireball. You can fire 10 dragon fireballs in a row. But if you want something a little bit more, let's just say, if you want something a little more powerful than just firing projectiles in a cone, you might want to use something like, where is it? Let's see. I know you can use Raycast. Just curious if there's something better. I don't think there's anything better than Raycast. What you can do is you can use the action on or active self. Where is it? Active self, where you press a key. So in this case, if you don't specify a key, it defaults to your primary key. If you need to, you can click on this key and set it to the secondary, which will set it to your secondary key. And you can use a bunch of entity raycasts. This is a far more complicated way of doing it. If we come in here, raycast. It's very complicated. You can cast out 10 different rays or 20 different rays, but each one of them has to be configured independently. It's not really much like a cone. And with the firewalls. If you're dealing with, I guess this is probably better if you're doing like a laser. You can probably do that instead. Raycasts in general are fairly complicated. If you do need some kind of raycast, then I actually have, it would be under action. I have an entire page on all of the parts of a raycast. You have to limit the range of the cone. Okay. Well, raycasts can be, so that's raycasts. Raycasts are fairly complicated. You can see all the different pieces here. Also, that's another bug. Second bug today. Should probably start writing these down then. Where this should be a header. The raycast field can be limited, so it kind of blocks off by a little bit. And then you don't have to, if you fire out many raycasts in a row using many entity actions, you can limit their range, and then you can make it so when they hit, they either set the entity on fire using an entity action, or they can also have particles on their travel path. I think there's probably a better way of doing this, so I'm going to look for it using the wiki. Just so I know, is there a specific power that you know of, or a specific origin that already does this? If you can find one, it can be very helpful to just kind of copy paste that, whatever they choose to use, and kind of copy paste that. I think that, I'm also curious, does fire projectile, I don't think it does. I was curious if it actually had not a cooldown, but if it had a limit on how long the projectiles could stay alive for. But do you know of any packs that do something similar? Probably keep looking for cone-based attack. Let's see. Here, I don't think it would be anywhere in here. I don't see anything in here that would be based upon that. Let's look at a power type. I don't know. Yeah, you can look around in the Origins Discord. I wouldn't necessarily see like if there's a power. You can look for powers or you can look for data packs that have the power in them. I don't know if there's any direct way. I don't think there is. I don't think there's a way to do anything more than either a bajillion raycasts or I don't think there's a way to do other than raycasts or is there like a way to do it with commands? You might be able to get away with using a circle in front of you. I don't think you can do a cone. I don't think there's a way to do it with a cone. But I think you can use a breath attack using a circle, which might be what you want. If you use a command, if you execute a command, let's see. This might be useful with an action. Let's see. Actually, I have to go back to my own wiki. I can use a specific power. Action. Find actually certain entities nearby. Area of effect. There it is. So what you can do, yes, for the circle method, what I'm thinking is you can actually raycast 2 blocks in front of you. So you can start with a raycast of some kind, or you can either start with a raycast. I think the raycast is probably your easiest method. So what you do with a raycast, I have an entire page for this if you want to learn how raycast works. But I'm just going to provide a very simple version of raycast where, let's see, active self, we want to perform an entity action. When we press the primary key, we'll perform a raycast that will go up to 2 blocks in front of you. This is 2 blocks. And that can be 2 blocks forward, to the side, any way that you look. Actually, I think it would be more of a sphere, but that shouldn't really matter too much. So let's say at 2 blocks, you're going 2 blocks in front of you. Then if you miss or if you hit, it shouldn't really matter either way. I think you have to double the entity action here. If you want to run a command 2 blocks in front of you, so this will raycast 2 blocks in front of you. I did. I put the raycast page in chat. It's the message right before yours. That's the raycast page. I believe that if you want to do a breath attack, if it hits a specific entity, it might block that, but you probably don't want that. So in the case of a hit or in the case of a miss, what you can probably... Oh, wait. Oh, I'm stupid. Just don't make it hit anything. that works. So this will raycast 2 blocks in front of you, and it will not hit any blocks or any entities because I unchecked those boxes. If you look at the page, you read it fully, you'll see what those do. So once it misses, because it can't hit anything, and it goes 2 blocks in front, we can actually activate an area of effect at that position. And we'll give it a radius of 2 blocks. And that area of effect, we don't want to include the target. I think that's the player. We don't want to include the player. Then we can execute a entity action on, let's see, the actor. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. So I think my push to talk wasn't working properly for a while there. I don't know how long that happened for. You do a raycast for 2 blocks. It won't hit anything because the block and entity checkboxes are unchecked. Then the area of effect after it misses, it won't hit anything, so it'll miss. Do an area of effect entity action. Don't want to include the target. Area, and then I can't remember. Area of effect, how does that work? The actor and nearby entities being the targets. It's weird. I don't know why it's not saying to include the target. I think that in this case, then we perform a target action. I don't know why it says include target. Why is that a thing? It's area effect. Oh, okay. This just says if the actor should be included in the target, which we don't want. So this should really say include actor, not include target. Okay. I might actually change the name of that. There's a third thing to change. So I probably should write all these things down. Oh well. So here we perform a target action on any entity in that range. Let's say we want to set them on fire. Set them on fire. So this entire thing will send a ray out 2 blocks in front of you, wherever direction you're looking, and then in a radius of 2 blocks from that position, in a radius of that, it'll set all of those entities on fire. So it works like a sphere or a circle. It goes 2 blocks in front of you, and then creates a sphere that's 2 blocks in radius. And that kind of works as a breath attack. You don't really need it to be a cone for all intents and purposes. It's close enough, and it'll work. And this does work in this case. So you can do a raycast. This is the JSON code. Do a raycast, uncheck the block and entity fields. Then once those are unchecked, then you could go to the miss action because it's never going to hit anything. And you choose area of effect 2 blocks in front, and then you, in that 2 block radius, you set all the entities on fire. You can do other things with this entity action. For example, if it's an actual breath attack, you might actually want to damage them. So you might want to damage all the entities by a certain amount, by 5 hearts. I don't know. But this is an entity action. You can do whatever you want with it, like any other entity action. I guess it does go to show that when you're dealing with origins in general, sometimes creating a solution requires thinking outside the box. You're not always going to be able to do exactly what you want to do with whatever you're working on. It could be available under a different solution. You might not have the ability to do it as a cone, but there is the ability to do it as a sphere or a circle. So this can be very helpful for doing that. I think this is the best solution that I can think of to do this kind of area of effect thing after a raycast 2 blocks in front. But yeah. So now we have a very strange Mario. I'm going to go ahead and add those powers to him. Break from below. I have not tested these, so I don't know if these actually work. Launch. Oh, I'm going to have to twice. Fire. Okay. So now we have a very strange Mario that's very big, can break blocks from below, and has fire breath. Or in this case, he doesn't have fire breath, but let's actually give him fire breath back by setting entities on fire. There we go. So now he has fire breath. Okay. So fire breath breaks blocks from below and is large. Okay. And now I can I have not tested this. I don't know if this works. Um, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I think I'll probably go ahead and end the stream here. Unless you guys have some other things that you'd like for me to show you. There wasn't really much turnout today, or at least not as much as I thought. But hopefully that can be fixed by doing the stream at a different time of day, which the next one will probably be at 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. EST. And maybe we'll get a couple more viewers from there, and we can get some more ideas from that. So, yeah. I'll go ahead and export this data pack and put it into my Discord. Maybe I should give it a name, better name. Let's give it a name. Mario Pack. Authors, Math Genius Zach, and then put names of the people in chat. I'll just say chat for now. And then we'll export that as data pack, Mario Pack. Okay. So I think that's been a pretty good stream. Showed how to use a couple of powers. I really wish there would have been a couple more requests for different things to do, but maybe we can find that on a different day. It might also be helpful to do more short form content where I explain how to make very specific powers. Instead of doing a live stream like this, I can make very small YouTube videos based upon suggestions submitted from people in my Discord. That I can do as well. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this, consider supporting me on Patreon or Ko-Fi. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.